The main problem was the fact that I had the appointment as the carer, and as my wife, she was entitled, because they needed her there for the discussion of the prognosis and so on, she had to come with me in a wheelchair, and they didn't want to take it because they hadn't got space for a wheelchair.
The idea was that they'd take the patient and the carer could go on public transport to the hospital, which really doesn't work whether you're in a wheelchair or elderly and frail. The hospital transport service took note of the difficulties and agreed to look into them and try to make some different arrangements. We've been invited to a follow-up meeting, and I think that they've also at least coordinated so that it doesn't depend on an individual driver. There is an official policy. I would much rather get myself around on my electric wheelchair than always be having to ask my husband to take me in the car. We keep campaigning and writing in letters, but certainly the more that we raise awareness through the reference groups and the PSI board, the stronger voice we have rather than individual people complaining about an individual problem.
It is a matter of education, I feel.
Every little helps. Even tiny things can make life much more accessible for at least 99% of the people. It's one particular opportunity where our voice was heard. There is a very old bridge. It's had its centenary celebrations, and we already had a warning that there could be no heavy lorries going across it, but it was still very overused and often closed for repair. They talked about making it, getting rid of the pavements, which would reduce the weight, and they thought that having pedestrians and traffic using the same area would make the traffic slow down. As a representative of the reference group and PSI board, with the extra weight of their voice behind me, I was able to persuade them that getting rid of the pavement was of particular difficulty to people with visual impairment who were relying on the curb edge for their seeing dog or their stick. And so they did keep a pavement so that there was a division.
I always think in society, we can identify somebody in a wheelchair, we can identify somebody with physical disabilities, but there are hidden disabilities which nobody knows about. A disability is not anything to be embarrassed about, all right? It's an unfortunate quirk of nature which puts us in this position. And people can be very isolated if they've got a disability. They can find that apart from going out once a week to pay the bills or whatever, they don't really have any kind of social interaction, which I think is really a criminal offence, because I think human beings thrive a lot better in community groups where they can actually discuss their issues and they can bring things forward. And the reference group is one of these places where over the last year and a half I found that they have brought things forward, and it's made me aware of issues which people have suffered.
It's a hidden disability. The requirement for deaf people is to have interpreters for meetings and appointments. What she means is, if I'm walking into town, nobody knows I'm deaf. It's not physical, it's about communication, so it's invisible. So if you bump into someone and they start speaking, you have to explain you're deaf. It can be a surprise to some people. So hearing and deaf people need to learn how to communicate with each other. It might be lip reading or notepad or facing each other. When you meet a deaf person, you must be face to face, speak clearly and without giggling. If they don't understand you, write it down. You'll need light too. If you want to phone a deaf person, you can use Type Talk. An operator reads text on a screen from the deaf person and translates that information to the hearing person. The response from the hearing person is then converted to text, which the deaf person reads. On a road crossing with a green man, a deaf person cannot hear the beeping to indicate it's safe to cross, so they have to watch. Deaf people can watch TV with subtitles. Without them, they have no idea what is being said. It's important. Sometimes there will be an in-vision signer on the television, but only sometimes. An important part of a deaf person's life is a BSL interpreter. That's a very important part. Without them, access will be difficult because of all the barriers.
Information is available. We aim to provide it in a consistent...
It's almost a case of trying to get through to them how simple changes that quite often cost nothing. If you can build up the relationship with the local authority or the provider, be it a bus operator, a taxi operator, then there's more chance of cooperation. When we went to Selby Hospital, for example, the pull cord in the wheelchair accessible toilet was in the wrong place.
It was over the...
So that when I backed up to the side of the pan, it sounded the alarm because it got trapped on my wheelchair. So all it needed was simply, because of the length of it, was extend it along the roof, put a cup hook in, bring it down, bingo, job done. Oh, well, is that acceptable? Well, yes, it will work. So how much is a cup hook? 5p. And they were staggered that we would find that acceptable. It's not about money, it's about something being fit for purpose. And in most cases, it costs nothing.
A lot of things that buildings have done, they've only thought of somebody going with a helper rather than somebody wanting to be independent. People who have somebody with a disability in their own family are often very aware, but many others have never imagined life from the point of view of somebody in a wheelchair or with a visual or hearing impairment.